Welcome to Classroom 2 Courtroom. Here's your host, Scott Benton.
Hey everyone, Scott Benton here. How are you? I'm the host of the Classroom 2 Courtroom podcast, where we help you easily transition from law school student into your professional career as an attorney, and where we make the practice of law fun. And today we're going to answer the question of, how do you mine for case facts? How do you mine for case facts? Are you a law student or recent graduate waiting for admission to the California bar and eager to gain real-world legal experience? Join the Legacy Lawyers' coveted associate programs in sunny Southern California. Our hands-on spring, summer, and fall programs provide opportunities to dive into high-stakes probate litigation. If you aspire to litigate and thrive in an America First culture that values God, family, and country, we want you on our team. Don't wait, space is limited. Call 714-766-0457 to learn more about this exciting opportunity. That's 714-766-0457. Elevate your legal career with the Legacy Lawyers. So there's going to be two parts of this when it comes to mining for case facts. And that's going to be the why part of the equation. And then there's going to be the how part. This podcast episode is going to be a little bit more concerned with the how part of the mining for case facts process. But since the why and the how really, they pretty much go together, and they wouldn't be able to exist without the other one, it's important that when you start working on a case and as you begin to gather the case facts from your client, that you're very clear on the why part of this in order to get deep down into the how part and really at the end of the day produce those critical case facts. As for the why part, meaning why do we mine for case facts? In general, the problem is that you early on really don't know enough about the case that you're working on in order to really work on it effectively and eventually carve out a victory. But when you mine for case facts and when you dig down deeply into the client's story, that's when you start to get the case facts that ultimately you're really going to need in order to meet the legal objectives that your client's paying you for. Now, as a hired gun, that's your hired gun as an attorney, where your skill set, even your reputation's on the line, you've got a pretty strong incentive to go through the process of gaining as many of your case facts from your client. Now, some of these case facts are going to apply to the law. These are case facts that are going to appear in the courtroom or in the hearing in front of a judge. And then other case facts, they're not going to apply to the law, but it doesn't mean that you're going to want to ignore those. Some case facts are going to be used as evidence. Others are really going to be used for understanding what your client wants and what's driving them. And those are background facts, what we call them at the law firm that I work at. And background facts they're not going to be known really to anyone except for you and your client. The judge isn't going to know them. Opposing counsel's not, they won't know them. No one but you and your client. These kind of background facts, these things that are really motivating your client. Maybe your client wants to move across country or move to another country or buy a vacation home or maybe do some renovations in their house, something, whatever it is, or put their daughter, their son through law school like you, and they need the money for that. But those are background facts that you're really not going to offer anybody, but it is going to be something that you and your client are going to have an understanding about because it provides that context in terms of understanding the drive. But you want to remember that all the case facts in total, whether they're useful to the law or not, if you're just going to keep them between you and your client, that they're all deeply important and they're all going to help you prevail in the case that you're working on. Now, with the why part out of the way, we want to circle back and we want to take a look at the how part of the process and how you need to understand that there are going to be different levels of depth that you're going to want to reach. There's different levels of depth. So let's start with the premise that case notes obtained during the initial consultation, they're simply not going to be adequate enough. Not by a long shot. These are real kind of surface level notes that are not very complex generally. They don't go as deeply as you really need to go at the point where the client has actually hired you. They help initially identify the case as being viable and worthy of pursuit. But once that's out of the way, you now need to spend time drilling down into much deeper territory of the case. And that's where you're going to be asking the client to retell their story with as much detail as possible. Now, as they're telling you the story, you're going to find yourself saying things to them like, tell me more about that. And you're going to use these simple kind of open-ended questions like, and then what happened? Then where did you go? Then what did you do? Tell me a little bit more. Keep going. And then what? These are just open-ended questions that you want to be armed with. It's easy to forget them when you're actually having a conversation with them, but open-ended questions, just in general conversation, is you want to have a few kind of go-to phrases. For me, I always use the, and then what happened? When someone is telling me a story or they're telling me something, recounting some incident that they were in, I'll often use, and then what happened, just to keep them going, to keep that story going, because I want to hear more. I want to keep them engaged. And then what happened? A lot of times people have this habit of wanting to keep their story short or realizing that they're talking too much or talking for a really long time, and they get a little self-conscious. So when you use phrases that are open-ended, and then what did you do? And then what happened? And then what did they say? That type of thing. How did they react? It keeps that story's engine moving forward. So you want to ask questions that will help the client include as much information as possible. You want to say, okay, who was there? And you want to say things like, what was cooking on the stove when you were there? And what did the food taste like at dinner? Was it good? Do you remember what the food was like? See, so you want to know about things like weather conditions and if it was hot or cold or humid that day, or maybe it was rainy. You want those small details because they're important to bring up to the client because they involve the five senses. Now, the five senses, they're extremely powerful motivators for bringing someone back into their memories. It's like when you're walking around, let's say you're walking outside or you're in the park or something, and suddenly you cross paths with a certain aroma like eucalyptus or maybe patchouli or something like that. Or it could be even like you walk by a Starbucks or a coffee house and you smell fresh coffee. It could even be the smell of somewhere else you walk by and it's the smell of fresh paint. Any of those kind of smells or aromas that can suddenly trigger memories. You want to ask them questions that involve their sense, all of their senses, not just the sense of smell, but in terms of aromas can bring you directly into forgotten memories. And that's just one example. All your senses are going to do that. They're going to bring you directly into specific memories. And the client's going to have a better chance of be able to recall details that you're not going to really be able to get to any other way. So you want to try and involve the five senses as much as possible. Now you can stop. You can also ask them about their feelings, for instance, because that's a sense, right? And you can ask them about what they were hearing around them at the time of the incident that you're exploring, or maybe what certain food or drinks looked like on the plate at the luncheon they attended. Whatever the situation is, you want to repaint that picture using the five senses to help bring back those memories. Now, the idea that we like to use to illustrate how deeply to dig when you're having these conversations and when you're starting to get into those details. At the law firm that I work for, we often say you want to go 3 layers deep. So you want to let the conversation, you want to keep looking for finer and finer distinctions, finer and finer details of the story. And again, you can do that by citing the five senses. What did it smell like? What did it taste like? What did it sound like? And what did you see? And the reason you want to do that is because the client, at some point, you want to go 3 layers deep because at some point, the client they're simply going to exhaust themselves. You're emptying their brain of all of these details because that's what they've been holding inside about the case, and you're getting them out on the table in front of them, in front of you. And even when that happens, when they're fully exhausted, they've emptied their mind of all the case facts that they have and that they've been carrying around in their head. You're not going to stop there. You're not going to stop because once their minds have been completely emptied, there's now a vacuum. that needs to be filled. And it's like that old saying that nature hates a vacuum. Because this is the moment in time, man, you might have talked to them for a couple of hours, whatever it has taken to get them to just completely empty their brain. They're going to now, because nature hates a vacuum, they're going to start to remember things they couldn't possibly remember otherwise when they still had all of that information and all of that clutter inside their mind. So you're providing room for them to fill that void, to fill that vacuum that has now been created by talking about the case so much. And they're going to remember critical details and all these case facts that have been really, they've been hidden from even them, and really sometimes for a long time. So that's it. And I hope that's been helpful information as you continue to build your legal career. I'm Scott Benton. I'm the host of the Classroom to Courtroom podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Now, if this is information that you're enjoying and you want to get an alert every time we put out a new episode, you can go to our website, which is classroom2courtroom.com. That's classroom, the number 2, courtroom.com. You can leave us your contact information. When we put out a new episode, guess who gets notified? You do. And if this is information that you're enjoying, definitely don't forget to share and subscribe. I know that sounds a little cliche, but it does help get our information out there, especially if you're enjoying what you're hearing, especially if this is helping you prepare for your first job as an attorney. And it will also help you stay on top of all of our newest episodes. And until next time, we hope you'll join us here. And we also hope you'll join us in making the world a better place, one client at a time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on Classroom 2 Courtroom, the podcast designed to help launch your first-time legal career. If you have any feedback or ideas for episodes you'd like to hear, you can always find us at classroom2courtroom.com, where you can leave comments, ask questions, and even join our online community. And always remember, by becoming an excellent and confident practicing attorney, you actually make the world a better place. Now get out there and master the art of practicing law.